Welcome to the lesson on calorie density. This lesson is arguably the most important component of the nutrition key of the 5 keys to optimal wellness. Of course, I don't want you to not have your eye on the ball on other issues we'll discuss, including sodium and fiber, protein, saturated fat, and cholesterol, as well as beverage calories that we've discussed. But this concept of calorie density and how to manage calories without hunger is arguably one of the most important components to your achieving prevention of not only type 2 diabetes, but disease in general. Did you know that there are 2 large, long-term, decades-long primate, meaning monkey, studies performed by the National Institutes of Health and the University of Wisconsin that have proven what we have seen time and time again, from flies all the way up to other mammals like rodents and even, yes, monkeys, proving that reduction of calorie intake, non-essential calorie intake reduction, prolongs life in terms of the University of Wisconsin study, where they fed the same exact foods to 2 groups of monkeys, just 30% less calories of the same processed chow in one group versus the other that had free access. And at least in terms of quality of life, quality of calories matters too, according to the NIH monkey study, primate study. But at this point, we want to keep it simple and focus on quantity of calories, and we will have plenty of time, particularly when talking about fiber as a marker of quality, to discuss quality of food. So let's start. Important for us to know that a big, arguably most important component of managing satisfaction with food and hunger management as part of that is the weight of food we eat per day. As well established as the scientific fact is, very few people know that we all need somewhere in a tight range, somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds of food per day to be satisfied, or otherwise risk uncontrollable levels of hunger and hunger hormones that will drive us biologically to eat and override any intellectual thoughts over what is healthy and what is not healthy to eat. Now know that foods range from less than 100 calories up to 4,000 calories per pound, 3,000 to 4,000 calories per pound. And I've just taken you, as you see in the picture, essentially from broccoli to butter and oils. Now, of course, nobody expects someone to eat 1.5 pounds of broccoli in front of you that you see there, but at 454 grams per pound, almost 600 grams of broccoli is what it would take to equal 200 calories, while it would take only 1 tiny ounce, 1/16 of a pound of butter to achieve the same. Of course, we can have anything. Butter, I just had a little bit a couple days ago, but it's about the average of our food choices and the average calorie density of what we eat. And it's very important in that process to make sure that we don't get stuck on portion control heavy approaches that starve us. Another depiction, again, not to beat up on butter, but almost 1 pound of apple, same 200 calories as a small 1/16 of a pound, 1 ounce of butter. And I haven't even told you this yet. When it comes down to minimally and unprocessed plant-based foods, we don't even absorb all of the calories. Probably somewhere between 75 and 90% of the calories only are what's actually absorbed. So you could probably add a few slices of apple to that plate and still have the effective equal calories of what would be absorbed from a obviously processed product, butter. Look at the picture on the right now too, and you get another depiction. Same calories of 6 ounces of apple, right, 1/3 of a pound, versus a phony fruit snack, something like jelly beans or gummy fruit snacks, that concentrates the calories into a small area because of the dryness and lack of water. In fact, the term calorie density is often confusing to people, and I like to more practically define it as calories per bite of food, or even to be technical, calorie concentration, because the word density is kind of confusing to people. We actually want foods that are low in calorie density, low in calories per bite, and calorie density is confusing. So low in calorie concentration and calories per bite is just as valid and probably something more understandable for you. Look at that large amount of fullness you get from the apple versus the tiny amount that will still leave you hungry, but for equal amount of calories, not even including those percentage of calories you won't even absorb from a high fiber, minimally processed plant when it comes to the apple, or other fruits and vegetables, whole beans and lentils and whole grains and so forth. Some of you may like visualization in a different way, and I want to present this to you in a simple fashion, focusing on these two pie charts, no pun intended, of the calorie intake of the average American in 1970 versus much more recently. And you see the calorie intake about 500 calories higher almost now versus then. Look how much of that pie chart is taken up by added fats, butter, oils, etc., and grains, which sadly are representing mostly refined low-fiber grains, white flour, in the United States, as well as even one that's not circled there, which is on the left around 9 or 10 o'clock, added sugars. So these are refined carbohydrates with added sugars and grains and added fats. And what you end up finding is that all of it has gone up. Particularly, the biggest jump up is in added fats since 1970 as far as a single group of fats versus refined starches and refined sugars. So it's not one or the other. Don't get caught in the battle of is it low fat, low carb? It is both. That's a bad tennis match. Look at how small, on the other hand, fruits and vegetables are in terms of representation of calories. Now watch this as we change the pie chart to a pie chart based on food weight and see how large fruits and vegetables are. Now, they're not at half of our plate from fruits and vegetables that the healthy eating guidelines from our government says to be eating, but still, they are a much larger part of the pie chart than what you previously saw, which I will go back to so you can see again how small fruits and vegetables are, sitting right around 12 o'clock, a little bit to 1 o'clock. Small represented by calories, large when represented by weight of food. And see how small, conversely, fats and oils are right around just before 12 o'clock on this pie chart, and relatively small around 6 o'clock added sweeteners and flour are, because they are calorie concentrated. So in order to get full, we have to eat a lot more calories from those type of foods than from foods that are low in calories per bite, which you already know one component of why they are lower in calories per bite, and that's they are high in water. And we're going to talk more about that. And take a look at how much of these drier, more calorie concentrated, both mixture of carbs and fats, in terms of all three from the left to ice cream, except for soda, which is all sugar, and in that category of beverage calories that we talked about doesn't get us full because it runs through the stomach too quickly. And we can see that, oh, well, a little of this, a little of that. Yes, a little of this and a little of that in terms of volume, but since it's packing so many calories in a small space, maybe we should get it closer down to 5% fun zone. Not to deny anything on occasion. It's not the issue, but you need to be knowledgeable, and this is about knowledge. That's what this lesson is all about. Now, another depiction for you. Let's change the concentrated calorie source, one that's also concentrated in sodium, I might add, but that almost pound of apples versus 2 ounces or 1/8 of a pound of hot dog. Or on the right, as you see a mixture of foods that have either calorie concentration from high carb and fat combined, the deep fried potato chips, just concentrated carbs, the white flour crackers, or largely just concentrated fat, the cheese, versus a large bowl of vegetables, which might even have a light amount of oil added, but still that small amount goes a long way when you're adding it to something very low in calorie density. In that case, we might say dilution is the solution, right? You can dilute the calorie density of that oil by adding lots of colorful vegetables and whole fruit and other foods that we'll be talking about that are low in calories per bite to your eating lifestyle. So let's cover these 4 points. Eating less approaches, portion control heavy approaches, don't work because they lead to unsustainable levels of hunger. We have a certain amount of food that we need to eat per day. It's relatively consistent. Trying to just reduce the amount of food that we eat as a tactic, unless you're a monkey in a cage living in a long-term experiment at the University of Wisconsin, is not going to work in a free-living environment for human beings. Because chronic hunger is like trying to manage secondhand smoke by holding your breath. Not going to work. So eat less, move more. You've heard it. We'll talk about move more and surprise you with some great tips in that regard. But just eat less, that's a falsehood. Doesn't work. Science shows that. Don't buy into it. We need to change the mix of what we eat to allow us the freedom to eat not only the same, but maybe even more more food than before for less calories. But you have to know calorie density, because that, knowing the calorie concentration or calories per bite of food concept, will allow you to be able to control calories without toxic level of hunger or even counting calories. So while calories count, you don't necessarily need to count calories, and especially important to know calorie density if you want to get to that point. So let me give you 2 quick tips you can put into action and deploy right now. Okay? Especially in a restaurant setting, this might be something to consider. But in general, as you're starting a meal, of course we don't want to be too hungry. We've talked about this with the hunger scale in a separate Mind Matters key lesson. But even then, and especially then if you are, as much willpower as you've got left, instead of starting on any regular basis with a bread basket or a chip basket or a cracker basket, something that's very calorie concentrated or very calorie dense, that you'll need to eat more calories than you want in order to take the edge off your hunger, even just take the edge off your hunger with these foods, and you could end up in a caloric risk zone that you don't want to be in. Instead, start your meal as quickly as possible with a nice garden-based salad, not a heavy processed meat, crouton cheese, heavy cream dressing salad, but one that's based on vegetables, and then yes, a sprinkle of your favorite or a small amount of your favorite dressing, a tablespoon shaken up, or I prefer some vinegar and just a little bit of oil, olive oil or whatever the case may be, and that can get you full, take that edge off for fewer calories and a lot more nutrition that we'll discuss later. And then to end the meal, finish with whole fruit. That is what the most long-lived people on earth, the societies with the best longevity, do most often. And traveling to Sardinia personally, as well as to the longevity zone in Costa Rica, I can assure you that's actually true. It's not as if they don't ever have a special sweet for dessert, but it's a rare occasion rather than a common one. So for those of you that are more visually oriented, I want to show you some pictures that actually manifest what we're talking about. There are food items that you see here on this collage of pictures that are more calorie dense. Clearly you see toast. On a couple of pictures you see a sandwich wrap, which is a whole wheat pita, but still it's dry, so it's more calorie dense. And you see some nuts in the upper right-hand corner, that basically runs out. There's also some nuts, pistachios in the middle row, second from the right. But the point is, what do you see the mass majority of, and the average, therefore, of calorie density dropping because of that? Foods that are high in water content. Let me give you some specific examples to show you that dilution is the solution type of approach. In the upper left, you see an omelet that was ordered at a local restaurant, in which you don't see the feta, but that was ordered light instead of what they offered, which was goat cheese, which has feta has no advantage nutrition over goat cheese. I just don't like goat cheese. So if you're going to have something that's more calorie concentrated or salt concentrated, at least do what you like. And they had no problem with that substitution. And as the bread basket landed, it was breakfast. I had no problem with a little, calorie-dense starch. Helps me start my day. But then I immediately took that smaller piece out to enjoy and put the bread basket on a table that was unattended so that the server could take it away, right? Leveraging your environment management. Willpower sucks. Don't try to rely on it. And then what do you mostly see? High water, high fiber, and high water, high protein foods. High water, high fiber in the fruit, high water, high fiber in the vegetables, high water, high protein in the egg whites. You get the point. Same thing as you go across here, you can see the leveraging of the calorie density without being an extremist. Clearly nuts are high in calorie density. Even though you don't absorb all the calories as a whole food, only about 75% of the calories of a whole nut that you see on a label will be absorbed, but still, even at that point, still high in calorie density, but it's diluted out. For instance, with the oatmeal in the upper right-hand corner. One packet on top of the oatmeal, maybe 2 at the most. The other packet I save on the side is something you can even do at Starbucks. Those 3 packets they give you with their classic oatmeal, you can get 3 packets of nuts instead of the sugar or the dried fruit, which isn't any more calorie dense than the nuts, but I already have healthy carbs and satisfied that with the oatmeal. But if you choose to do raisins and dried fruit, that's fine as well. The point is you're still diluting a calorie dense food with something lower in calorie density, oatmeal, because the water's cooked into the oatmeal. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. And even at McDonald's, I want to point out the fast food items because this is where reality meets science. Bottom right-hand corner, you see an oatmeal. How did I adjust it? It can be ordered without cream, which really just adds calories and not much flavor. Trust me, I've tried it both ways. And then instead of the dried fruit, I ordered extra apples instead. Now we have high water, high fiber from the cooked oatmeal, water cooked into it, and we have healthy sweet, but instead of having a serving of more calorie dense, less fullness per bite dried fruit, we added extra apples instead. So even on the run, you can do that. You can't subtract the brown sugar that they have in the oatmeal, but it's really one thing that's calorie dense, that's diluted, dilution is the solution, by all of the rest that's high in water and fiber. And with that unmodifiable component, again, why have the dried fruit? Although dried fruit is fun, very good in terms of quality of calories, and I would strongly urge it over phony fruit snacks for other reasons that you should already be aware of in terms of fiber and potassium, etc. Now, quick note on the shake that you see in the middle, because we wanted to discuss, and I want to make it clear, when we talk about beverage calories don't get you full, those are thin liquids like sugar pop, fruit juice, alcoholic beverages, and creamed coffees. Thick, high protein, high fiber type smoothies, which you can soup up to a medical level of quality by using a formula type of protein powder mixed with, in this case, strawberries, for instance, some frozen strawberries, and then some water, and I also use some unsweetened soy milk. Work, as well as even a commercial product like Slim Fast High Protein. Those are thick protein and possibly protein and fiber rich type drinks that can provide sustained fullness. But you see the concept of calorie density being used all across this collage. We've mentioned the water. I want to now clarify even further what determines calories per bite or calorie concentration of foods, or technically calorie density. One is, you know, the intrinsic water content. That water can come from roots in the ground, think fruits and vegetables, from cooking, think legumes like beans, lentils, and peas, and grains, preferably whole, but even refined. When you cook them, they absorb water, they increase the weight, and decrease the calories per bite. So fullness, less calories per bite. Example, speaking of bread, let's compare bread to oatmeal. 4 ounces of oatmeal will get you just as full as 4 ounces of bread, although bread for other reasons might be more satisfying in some ways and a non-negotiable, but that's where the portion control concern more is. 4 ounces of oatmeal versus 4 ounces of bread will get you just as full, but the oatmeal will have far less calories because the oatmeal is about 70% or more water from the cooking, whereas the bread is mostly calories in the form of carbohydrate and very little water. So in order to get to 4 ounces, you have to eat more calories. Now, but beyond water, there is fat content of foods. Why does that make a difference? Because gram per gram, remember it's the weight of the food that gets us full, causes stretch receptors in the lining of the stomach to fire from that weight and gravitational pull that sends a signal from a nerve to the fullness center of the brain that we're full. But gram per gram, fat has more than double the calories than protein or carbohydrate. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Protein and carbs, whether starch or sugar, have 4. Last but not least, fiber is something else that can contribute to weight of food without calories, but it's a small contributor in that regard versus water, which can have a huge contribution to weight. But it's still a player, it's a minor player in terms of getting full on less calories. But as far as staying full on less calories, which is different than getting full, stay tuned because fiber is very important. And typically, Foods high in natural fiber, not processed added fiber, that you would find in an ice cream or a yogurt, or obviously something that's not intact and natural fiber like fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains, really helps with chewing. And chewing is another component that helps with fullness, and something that can help food be more naturally chewy. Fiber frequently meets that, is also helpful for fullness on less calories. Last but not least, remember, we're not talking about extremism. I can't emphasize this enough. It's the average calorie density of what we eat over a lifetime that matters. There will be room for foods high in calorie density, as you have seen, as well as even NN, which is non-negotiable foods, our 5% fun zone. So that's not the point of this. It's the average, like a budget. Okay, you might go on vacation to Hawaii or wherever and spend a lot more than you would day to day, but it's what you spend in your budget over a year that matters, not what happens over a small period of time. So keep that in mind. There is no single food choice or beverage choice at any single point in time in virtually all situations that's in and of itself a mistake. Now, you will need two things to now take what you've learned here, and for those of you that are really numerically oriented, put it to work when it comes to reading a nutrition facts label, whether at a grocery store or looking up a restaurant online or using another resource like nutritiondata.com, which is a great place to search foods, nutrition content, and helps put things right into a nutrition facts label for you, as well as the added benefit that at nutritionfacts.com you can pick different serving sizes and make everything, every food choice on nutritiondata.com allows you to pick a 100-gram serving size. That way, just like comparing the oatmeal to the bread, 4 ounces of each before that we mentioned, you can compare the same exact amount of food between foods and compare their calorie differences. Okay? And then you'll understand why watermelon is not full of sugar, but it's full of, appropriately named, watermelon. Also, you might occasionally see in the serving size area of a nutrition facts label where you almost always will find the gram weight of food, that secret and powerful number that you'll need. Sometimes you'll see things say 1 ounce. That's fine. I just need you to know that 1 ounce is about 30 grams. Okay?